Yes, we can see your screen.
All right. All right. So, hi. Yeah. So, um, I'm going to talk about some monitoring and incident response tooling that we've been working with recently. Found to be very useful, both for doing threat management and also analyzing endpoints. So, we want to put together like an overview related to that. Also, the system has a nice integration with Velociraptor. The system we discussed has a nice integration with Sysmon. I think it's the up and coming like distributed monitoring and incident management platform. So kind of give you a deep introduction to it, and gonna I'm gonna be assisted with a guest speaker Andre Randa, who does a lot of threat management. So I'm going to change the format a little bit because he has to leave a little early. So I'm going to give you an introduction, and then he's going to go into some details about threat management, hunting, and that kind of stuff. And then we'll go into the details of Velociraptor, how you install it, some of its functionality, some examples of what it looks like. So it'll be it'll be quite extensive. All right, so there we go. Um, Andre, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, Larry, how are you doing?
Okay,
Hi,
great.
everyone.
Just want to make sure that we're all in one piece here.
For sure.
All right. Okay. So traditionally, in incident response and forensics, you got to like actually capture the endpoint, physically and image it. It was a pretty laborious process. Um, and then also it's very limited in distributed insight to the endpoints. So like so stuff like digital forensic investigations, deep visibility is missing from that, threat hunting, cyber breach response, and operational security monitoring. And it's also difficult to do, distributed real-time forensic analysis, especially of large amounts of machines. And so that's what this infrastructure is trying to address. The system that we're going to discuss, Velociraptor, is kind of its design principles. It basically is an endpoint with the server infrastructure that lets you run like various custom queries uh, called VQL to analyze and retrieve data from the endpoints in a very um, how would I say, very well organized and easy to use way. Um, so you could do all kinds of like collect, analyze, monitor, respond to findings. This is the architecture. You got a client, which is always on client, which is really nice. So anytime you send queries to the client, it executes them. You get the data back instantaneously. If the client's offline, you can detect that as soon as it comes online. It'll connect back up, and you can operate on it. It's got a server with the web UI, and then yeah, that's the basic architecture. We're actually running the Velociraptor server in AWS. So the nice thing about running a server in the cloud is if you deploy these forensic endpoints in your organization, um, you can actually monitor the endpoints even when your your customers go home. So the nice thing about it is like you can monitor them on the network, and then when they go home, the client will log into the Velociraptor server that's online, and you can monitor them there as well. So you can do forensics and threat management operations, even with people working from home in a very easy to integrate way. They don't even need to be on the VPN. Um, so this is where the server is. Server can be if deployed, requires those ports to be open, um, and yeah. So that's you need to generate config files, and then there's a server config and a client config. Um, and the server config, use the server config file, and then the clients, you can use multiple ways of installing them. You can just install them in a one shot, or you can, there's an MSI package you can install via group policy. And then this is just instructions on how to do that. And so then this way you're running it as a service, and you can manage the installation via group policy. And then there's also an agentless deploy where you can like set up a share, and then the clients can access that share, and then you can create a group policy that they execute the Velociraptor agent from the share, and this way you don't have to install anything on the machine. So it's just this basically goes into the details of how to do that. Create a GPO. You edit the GPO. Create a scheduled task. So the slides will be available if you need, you want to use them as a reference. Basically, then there's you set up the properties of the task, right? You run it as system. Yeah, and you basically run it at all times, and then you start it up. And then these are some other settings that you could do. So this is not really nice. There's a lot of options for executing it, and you can get pretty good coverage with this. All right, so once you got everything up and running, what do? You can do investigate. These are some things you can do with the clients. You can download remote files. You can read registry keys remotely. You can look at evidence stored in volume shadow copies. So if there's some type of weird exfiltration, you can actually look, get a detailed to see if any data is being hidden. It's got a virtual file system, so you can actually mount the file system remotely, so you can actually inspect the file system on any machine in a very easy to consume way. You can look at the file system by OS. You can do raw access to the file system. You can like Windows registry, and you could collect any object from the file system. And then there's these VQL scripts you can run on the client. They're called client artifacts. So basically, you can get it just about any. There's like dozens of these things, and we'll do a quick little review of this when we do the demo. But you can collect all kinds of stuff from the clients. Web browser caches, AM caches, files on the file system, whatever you want, and then you could set that up as a group. You can put all the agents and clients in a group, and then you can run this thing across the whole entire infrastructure. Even if the client is offline, when it checks in, it'll automatically pick up the scheduling and execute it and send it to you when it's available. So it also tells you when things are offline or online. This is some of the stuff that the client collects. Well, it's just some metadata around what the collection detail is. Yeah, we'll show some examples of this. There'll be a flow. A collection is called a flow. And then basically there's a flow ID. There's what was collected, creation date, last active date, and then who executed the collection. And then there's some stuff on the server side as well, called server artifacts. This is basically stuff that you do to manage the data that the clients collect, or to distribute and install other types of tooling that the client agents need, or the VQL needs to execute stuff. Like the one really nice thing on the server side is there's a Sysmon integration, so that you can actually deploy Sysmon as part of the Velociraptor agent, and then you can get all the benefits of Sysmon monitoring, and then have Velociraptor collect the Sysmon data for you. Makes it really easy to do advanced threat analysis and triaging. So more on server artifacts. VQL exposes functionality, making it possible to manage the server deployment as well as post-process and correct results from the entire deployment. It just basically runs and provides output. Then there's server events also, which can get notifications from clients. And then there's just some stuff about how to execute it. Hey, Andre.
Yeah, hey, Larry.
I'm gonna like let Andre do his section on. He's got a really good introduction to threat hunting. So because this is the philosophy of threat hunting is a big piece of the Velociraptor philosophy. So I'll let him run through his threat hunting slides, and then we'll get back. Okay, we'll get back to this. We'll get back to stuff I've got.
Great.
Okay, let me let you start here, Andre, and you tell me when you want to switch the slides.
Sure. So yeah, I wanted to talk about kind of the 30,000-foot level, the difference between threat detecting and threat hunting. And really they're the same. I would say threat hunting bubbles up to threat detection. There's lots of different definitions, and I think that the goal of most orgs, and I'm doing a little bit of threat hunting in the background right here now for an organization that I'm working with, and they've defined threat hunting in terms of like they're submitting tickets to their incident response teams that are kind of like these threat hunting tickets. So there's stuff to kind of investigate and potentially even automate and correct your threat detection at a later time. So as you see in this table kind of here on the right, threat detection is on the left and threat hunting is on the right. Threat hunting is more about like creating your new ideas and then kind of going with them and creating, you know, what you think will be evidence. What is an indicator of compromise for your organization, you know, and how does it apply to you? So it has a lot of business context to it. Where generic threat detection is more like stuff that you get like kind of like canned, like out of the box from security products, whether it's in an endpoint protection product like, you know, McAfee or Symantec, whether it's an EDR like the one I'm working with now is called CrowdStrike, which is very similar to Velociraptor that Larry had just showed you. And then there's other tools like SIEMs, the Security Incident and Event Management kind of portal, like it's like a single pane of glass to look at all of your detection logic to detect all of the threats, right? And so the important piece, I guess, to take away from this slide and to just kind of think about is, you know, like once you've kind of identified your threat hunting process and how it feeds into the rest of your processes, like incident response, how do you kind of close the loop? Like, are you going to invoke a full incident response based off of a threat hunting session? How are you going to improve your controls, whether it's your threat detection controls that are missing because you've identified a gap with them in threat hunting, or whether or not you're going to, you know, just improve, like, say, a protect process, like implement better firewall rules or a block list or something like that. Next slide. Thanks, Larry. So threat detection and threat hunting are kind of both aligned, and they both have kind of competing goals. They're not all just the same, right? I would say that threat hunting is kind of like more of the special forces approach, while threat detection is more of like kind of like the rank and file infantry approach. And that's what that F3AD comes from. You just try and fix, you know, and exploit and disseminate and analyze all the badness that you have in your environment, right? Where threat detection is more like kind of like automatic. You create a system and it auto escalates things and automatically alerts people and it gets people in motion and going. And that's the important piece of threat detection. The nice thing to think about, I think, here, because we are working with threats, we're working with people or code like bots out there on the internet that are causing your organization problems. The thing that you want to think about is how, not just are you going to detect them, but how are you going to stop them from keep doing the same thing over and over every day? Like, do you really want to see the same bot attack your website every day? Or, you know, and blocking it, you know, like, how do you know that it hasn't changed its motivations or what it's doing, you know, like, or what your users are seeing there? Obviously, the attackers are going to be changing and upping their game all the time. So how do you keep up with all that? And how do you, you know, let alone manually process it, let alone automate it away? And I would say the best thing to do is to kind of like work on these takedowns. And typically you have to hire an outside provider to do that. Some legal teams do that internally if your org's large enough. But the two kind of key ones are Mark Monitor, who does this kind of like as a service for like each fish, and they'll remove like each country, or they'll go into each country's like law enforcement or server or ISP infrastructure and ask them to block or prevent the server from spamming people. Or they'll go in and they'll take the server and they'll remove it from the data center and be like, this is a bad guy server. Let's analyze this and see what bad guy stuff we can get out of this information. So they'll go and do that for you. And there's a few others called Recorded Future that I'm working with today, and another one called ZeroFox that I was working with months ago that will do these services for you. Typically, they'll only do like 1 or 2 takedowns per month. So you have to take it in your initiative to kind of like, because some bad guys will be attacking you more than once or twice a month, to do your own sort of, like preventing things from happening. And so when you have a secure web gateway or a firewall that implements these kind of unified threat features, unified threat management features, you'll have like URL filters. And so like it prevents people from browsing to websites, basically is what it does. And it has an automated reputation list of good and bad websites. And you basically can configure it to kind of understand certain websites for you. For example, in like the Palo Alto firewall, you have URL filtering systems that will like allow people to go to everything that they want except for bad guy sites. But like, how will you see which ones are bad guy sites? Sometimes you're getting too much like into the user's information. And so you'll be like, well, don't get into the user's information if it's a banking website or if it's a healthcare website. And so that may expose them to additional malicious sites, especially around banking and healthcare, but at least you're not using the system to kind of like see into their information. So it's kind of like a balancing act of like, how well do you want to like see in the privacy of the data with your employees or partners or, contractors or consultants are working with, and how you want to like kind of like block all the badness out there. There's also ways of submitting kind of phish sites. So like if you've heard of Google Safe Browsing, or Microsoft has a few to like the delister stuff, to basically go in and say like, hey, I received a phish from this domain or from this email address, or I saw this bad IP address. Let me submit this and get rid of it. And in also cases, you may see a site that's good that the system's reporting is bad. You're like, you can't go to this website is what your Palo Alto or other firewall may tell you. And you're like, no, that's a good website. So you can go in and correct those errors as well. So you go online to one of these places like Symantec Site Review, and you review the site, and it automatically kind of tells you whether or not it's a good site or a bad site on its algorithms. You can context it more, and you can even work with the Symantec or Palo engineers to figure out what you want to do. But that's a good way of blocking people. So that's a good way of taking action. I guess the last thing I would say here is that let hunting drive all those types of activities for your business and what you want to do. And it doesn't always have to be about response. I would say rarely it's about response, but on a good day, blocking a good threat is going to help your people. You can go ahead, next slide. So what we've kind of seen is threat detection has some value, and threat hunting has other value depending on the type of system that you're using. So for like email systems, it's going to have kind of like a lower value for threat hunting, but it's going to have a higher value for, a lower value for threat detection, but a higher value for threat hunting. So when you're tracking down specific like proof point or anti-phishing email stuff, or you've seen users that have received phishes, then you can go in and start a hunt. Your automatic system, your SIEMs, your EDRs aren't necessarily going to do all that for you. Your antivirus isn't going to solve all the phishing problems. If it did, then we'd just use antivirus. We wouldn't have anything else. And then your firewalls, they definitely, they don't help threat hunting, but they are doing a lot of automatic work in the background there. Go ahead, next slide. I guess it's mostly about events and alerts is the difference there. What signatures or whatnot. I'm sorry, you skipped ahead too far. You skipped ahead too far. Go back. Okay. Here. And so for endpoint, what your endpoints are seeing is that's SIEM on the left and then that's EDR on the right. And so EDRs are going to have more value to the threat hunter than SIEM, and that's kind of like the opposite that you're seeing. So same sort of effect as the last slide. Go to the next slide, please. So this is about use case development, especially when people are working with the SIEMs, the security incident and event management tools like Splunk in your environment, or they're working with even like the Velociraptor or endpoint detection and response tools in their environment. This is going to be kind of your bread and butter. Like you need to kind of define and document what you want out of it and relate your business cases to it. So you may have this MITRE attack framework, which allows you to tell you all the attacks the bad guys can do from the tactic level to the technique level. But how do you relate it to your business? And then how are you going to detect it? Where are you going to detect it? All the steps that you need to do that, I think, should be documented by a sort of incident response team or a hunt team. Go ahead to the next slide. And then we'll tie all this back together. There's this React framework, which is kind of like the corollary to the attack framework. So attack is like, how do you detect? And react is like, what do you do when you do detect? And it sort of prepares and allows you to identify as well as contain, eradicate, and recover, and then also learn lessons from all of the things that happen in your environment. And so this kind of makes it more programmatic. So let's say you have a file hash, like a bad file, like it's an MD5 or a SHA summary of the badness that you're seeing in your environment, or of a bad IP address, an IPv4 address, or even IPv6 address, or a fully qualified domain name, so a host name out there on the internet that you don't like. You can use this procedure, which is basically, so like, let me walk through this a little bit. The RA2404 basically says, find the process by hash, and then 2312 says, analyze the file hash. Or if you're working with IP addresses, you can work with list the host communicated, which would be RA2113. And then 4 and 5 would also be for domains and URLs, and et cetera. And so you can work through that. You can work it from the phishing layer. You can collect the email message, which is 2202. Then you can make sure the email message is phishing. And so all this programmatic logic can be built into a security orchestration and automation and response platform, or SOAR. So SOARs are kind of like the new SIEMs. They call it like next-gen SIEM, or combining SOAR with next-gen SIEM is kind of the newest layer. I'm a SOAR engineer by day. I've been working with the Palo XSOAR product. There's some open source ones. The one that I recommend that just came out over the weekend that's really good and kind of would work with Velociraptor environment is called Hybrid Hunter. It's a part of the Security Onion package. And I downloaded the ISO. I'm going to be playing around with it this week. It's got a lot of good things that you can do programmatically here. That basically you can create your own alert notifications. You can respond to phishes. You can respond to attacks. There's all sorts of things you can do that are making this a little bit easier to automate for your detection and response systems. Go ahead, and I think this is the last slide. Actually, yeah, we're going to talk about the flip side to this coin. And I think that it's important, and I think that when Larry and I work together, he's more of the attack pen tester, and I'm more of the defender, the responder, the blue team, and he's the red team. But I like to go into how these two things can be working together. I was at a conference many years ago when I was working for a major bank and credit card company, and we had this Financial Services Information Sharing Alliance Center, or FSISAC meeting. I think that there's an MSISAC group that works for educational institutions. It's a multi-state center. And I think it was under President Obama's era when he kind of like instituted this new policy about information sharing alliance organizations. Basically, how do we share our cyber threat information? And we were in this conference, and I remember I brought up this one question because the whole thing was about risks versus threats. The threats are supposed to be the people and the bots, and the risks are the things that are everything else. They're kind of like the vulnerabilities and all the rest of the things that you find and piece together. And usually it's the threats work to make this happen. But if you can do the risk hunting before the threat gets there, that's even better. So I asked the question, what's the difference between threat hunting and risk hunting? And everyone kind of said, well, you know what, Andre? Risk hunting is more strategic than threat hunting. Threat hunting is very operational. It's very tactical. You can get down into the nitty gritty of each piece of malware, each phish, each IP address, its interactions with all the rest of the other IP addresses. Everything has kind of an interaction. But in risk hunting, you kind of have to make your own. So let's go to the next slide. And this is sort of the new process that we've come up with to kind of integrate blue teams with red teams and to kind of bring pen testing to kind of the next level. So there's a lot of automation you can work in the early layer of risk hunting. And you can start by doing this atomic testing, kind of like the unit layer, the component layer, the system testing that's very quick and easy and repeatable, and that's automatable. And you can integrate that same type of technology into your security orchestration, automation, and response tools. The next kind of layer, which I think is the most important for most businesses to get to, for most organizations to get to, is that purple teaming. Taking your pen tests and working with your protect people, the people that do the patching, as well as the people that do the detection functions, to kind of work together. Say that you're going to be testing, work to find out where the detection was missing, so that you can kind of collaborate and do all the things that you really need to do to basically up the game and prevent the attackers from working. So I would say that both of these can be sort of continuous type testing. I would say atomic is like kind of like all the time and works when you're sleeping, right? Where purple teaming is something you want to do, like to test your detections, week by week, sometimes even day by day. And then some of these other higher level activities are the stuff that like Larry loves to do, like pretend to be a real attacker. Don't announce your attack. Don't tell everyone that you're coming, that you're going to be testing, and then provide a huge report at the end. And it's very complex testing, and it takes a lot more time, and it uses kind of like more of a campaign model. So I think
I think that's it.
Yeah. So thanks, Larry.
Oh yeah,
I had.
Oh no, there's a couple more. There's a couple more.
Right.
I'll go through those real quick.
So yeah, we talked about the atomic testing and how it was
purple
there.
teaming.
For purple teaming. So one of the things I like to do when you're purple teaming is have like a daily brief, rebrief, debrief. So like in the morning, say what you're going to be testing. Have everyone say like, here's what we're going to be testing, and here's what it's going to affect our environment, and here's our concerns about it. That would be the rebrief. And then at the end of the day, have a debrief with the lessons learned and be like, what did we learn today? And then deal with all those remediation components. It all has to do with like what you can do today, right? Next slide. So the red teaming piece is the notion of all these kind of like a more standardized approach to doing tabletop and live fire exercises and kind of mixing between the two. So I think that the nice thing about red teaming is that you can learn and you can kind of include like your kind of your CISOs and your other kind of like business leaders, and involve them in an exercise that doesn't necessarily get down into every single nitty-gritty detail of the attack, but more like how the organization would respond to the attack. And then the last slide. Thanks, Larry. So this would be like the adversary. This is kind of like the most mature, and I think that a lot of organizations aren't here yet. I think like JP Morgan Chase and a few other big banks do this type of stuff where basically they mess with the bad guys by getting into their tempo, by messing up with their key terrain and like trying to, it requires a lot of work. It requires that you kind of like act like, I guess the US military probably does this a lot too, when they're trying to mess with Iran and Russia and all the rest. But like I said, some banks and some organizations are doing this. This is kind of the ultimate. The nice kind of key takeaway from adversary emulation is that you can start implementing some of this stuff by basically putting in sort of the similar type of C2 profiles that command and control the malware do. And I know that Larry has done this before, where basically you're trying to look like you are a real bad guy in the environment, so that people can catch you like you're a real bad guy. So this kind of provides the most value to the blue team, to the defenders, to the responders when they're working through these types of activities. And that's one of the key takeaways. Yeah. So thank you for following through this maturity cycle and understanding a little bit more about threat and risk hunting. Cheers,
yeah.
Larry.
Yeah. Hey, so I think what we could do is show the Velociraptor a little bit.
Oh, please, yeah.
Could you share your screen, or I could do it, whichever is easiest.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm on an iPad,
and then
so
we can just kind of walk through it, and you could comment as necessary.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's a fun little tool.
Yeah. So can everybody see my screen? Hello?
Yeah, I can see it, Larry.
Okay. All right. So this is the Velociraptor UI. This is basically, we have in this this server is running in AWS, and it's got three agents, 3 clients. The green means that they're online. Actually, you can search for anything in here. Yeah, it's in this search box. So if you have hundreds of these out there, you can find a specific client. You can just list everything just by clicking there. These are all the green means they're online and live, so you can interrogate them. We've got an Ubuntu box, a Windows 2019 server, and a Windows 10 client agent. So as you can see, it's and then you can just click on one of these, and then you could see more details for it. Andre, feel free to comment as necessary. Here's the VFS. Now this is the actual. You can actually go down and integrate directly with the file system. You can look at what's on the drive. You can actually pull any file, any object. You can examine the registry. I don't think I have the registry collected on this one, but anyway, you can. Okay, let's go back to the client. So yeah, so that's the Linux. There's the Windows 10. There's a VFS. Then where's the collection on that one? To show something.
Yeah, go into the Windows 10 and then collected.
Yeah. All right. So these are all this is all the data we've collected on the Windows 10 server. as you can see, you're gonna maybe comment on it a bit, Andre.
Yeah, select that third one down. It's got that whole list of Windows Forensics, Windows NT. And
Okay.
so basically, when you select each of these that you've done the collection, you can see at the bottom, you can see the results in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can, initially you need to prepare the download, but once it's downloaded, you can see that zip link, and then you can download all those things that you collected. And as it's going, you can see it in the log, how it's proceeding. Click on the log tab on the last one there. And then you can see that it already succeeded and did all of its thing. And then the results tab is kind of like when the log portion is done. So like, you know, if there's any errors, you'll see them in the log thing. But in the results, if everything's working fine, click on the results tab right next to it. You can see that that it's uploaded the files that it needed to, right? And then go back to the artifact collection, the first tab. Oh wait, yeah, stay right here. Actually, click on the binoculars and the question mark. So the binoculars will show you the JSON code. There was a response, kind of like raw, because you can do these all in queries and then automate it all. And then click out of that. Just click in the outside the window, anywhere. And then yeah, click on the question mark. And then here's the query that caused that response, right? And so you can kind of see everything that occurs. And then it's a real nice tool that you have.
Yeah,
full
one
access to
interesting
kind of
thing
like
about the
all
VQL queries is each artifact has a VQL query, and then you can actually modify these if you need to adjust things or add, you know. So it's the nice thing about Velociraptor is every artifact, the collection artifact, is modifiable. There's people that release
Yep.
them all the time. You could create your own. You could modify others, and so you have a very, very granular, robust ability to analyze and collect data on the on just about any type of endpoint.
Yeah, go ahead and click out. And then yeah, you can show them that by clicking that plus right there.
Yeah, so in order to start a collection, you click on collect new artifact, and then you can type in what these are the artifacts available. So you can see these are all the kinds of things you can collect. So yeah, so it's pretty robust. And then yeah, when you click on the collection, right, then you can just launch the collection down here.
You have to add it first. Click on the add button in the middle.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so that's these, and there's all kinds of packages that you can do. You can add Chrome cookies here as well. So it's going to get the Chrome cookies. This is going to collect evidence on the client that there's like certain things were executed.
Yeah.
Then we launch the collection, and then this hourglass is going to be there, and then this basically executes that thing on the client, and then you can just, you know, and then when it's ready, you can just take a look at it. This is what's collected, just like before. You can actually grab these files. It tells you what is collected, and so it's great for analyzing the client. Let's see what else anything else I should go over on this?
Go back to the server instance.
Okay, is that here? Server instance, that's home, right? Okay. All right, so this is going to tell you CPU memory utilization, and then all the clients that are connected also gives you a little bit of a mapping of what's connected. So we have 3 current clients agents collected, and then also the users that are authenticated now to the server. So you get a little bit of that as well.
Larry, I got to drop off, but I'll be watching along with you guys. Thank you for having me.
All right. So that's kind of the overview of the Velociraptor server. I'm trying to see. Yeah. So I'll go back to the presentation, just finish that up. Okay. Let's do that. All right. Well, let me. Okay. All right, so we went to adversary emulation. Let's go back here to this. All right, so file finder artifact. All right, so this is another thing you can run. This is gets you raw access to the files on the system, and you can search for certain types of files. You can add YARA rules. So it gives you a very granular ability to run a artifact collection and get very specific. You can add wildcards and globs and match files. So if you want to collect certain types of files across all your systems, this is a good way to do it. You can create groups, so you can group your client agents and clients into certain groups, and then you can collect those. Okay, yeah. So this is the way you can run a query across multiple clients. You can, if client's not logged in yet, you can run it. You can there's all kinds of artifacts, like for Sysinternals tools. Like, let's say some attackers like to use Sysinternal tools to look at processes. You can run that. Right, so there's some detailed DFIR details. You can, yeah, basically instead of collecting images now, in doing forensic imaging, you can run these artifact collections and get very detailed on what you want to collect. And there's a very neat thing called Kapefiles. These are specific files that are collected for incident response. There's a whole entire website around that, and GitHub around that you can collect. And yeah, Velociraptor lets you run a Kapefiles target, collect all that information. Yeah, there's that. Okay, so this was Andre's. Okay, then a little bit about Sysmon, right? So Sysmon is the agent that lets you collect specific data about the logs. And so hash to collect. Okay, yeah. So basically, Sysmon lets you collect granularly all stuff on the disk. Hold on one second. Hello? Okay, I'm back. All right, so yeah, so Sysmon lets you collect very granular things from the system. Lets you collect hashes. Yeah, lets you collect. Basically, lets you look at drivers. Basically, so what it is it lets you get granular events from the system and endpoint. And the nice thing about this is Velociraptor actually lets you manage this whole agent deployment and analysis. Oops. Sorry about that. Yeah, so another thing is Sysmon generates impashes. Impashes are hashes of the basically the import library of the malware, and so it's common across malware families. So when you get impashes and you can collect these with Velociraptor, it becomes very, very useful for when you're doing malware analysis across the network. Yeah, so this is the integration on the server side. Velociraptor can help you manage Sysmon deployment installation. You can deploy Sysmon on the endpoint with that server, 2 server artifacts, and you can also deploy the Sysmon config file. In my presentation in the afternoon, I'll go a little bit more details of installing Sysmon, but this is basically. So you don't need to now install Sysmon separately. You can have Velociraptor manage your Sysmon installation and everything else. Velociraptor also has a query language, which we touched on briefly. It's an expressive language for querying endpoint state. It adapts to new IOCs. It's a simple to use and simple to understand. And it draws, it's like SQL, and you can create your own. Each artifact is like a YAML file, and it has the VQL that's going to execute on the client in it. Like, you can modify it. You can actually create your own VQL queries on the fly. It kind of looks like this. It's kind of like a SQL statement, except it pulls data from a plugin. Okay, this is okay. So we talked a little bit about this before in the actual live demo. But this is basically searching for clients. You can attach labels also to any client. So if you want to group clients for hunt groups, you can attach a label to them. So that's nice as well. And then you can run artifact collections against the labels. And then this is the virtual file system. So we looked at this a little bit briefly as well. And then so that you can see you have a very granular access to the local file system. And and then that's basically it. So that's kind of that. I can if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer some questions or show you a little bit more of the UI.
If you want to go over some of the reports available, Larry, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so actually the reports are mostly related to, let's see here, let's see what we can find out about the reports. Okay, so basically, it's more of a data collection thing rather than a report. But you can see these are collected artifacts. I think we showed this a little bit, but if you look at what's available, like this is actually binary data of the memory of the machine. So, and it's available in this file. And then the log. So this is some of the stuff you could put in a sim. Let's see. This is basically some more stuff about what happened. So basically, let's see, generate client info. Anything specific you go into as far as data collections, Amir?
I'm just trying to help people understand what sort of features are available that they can take advantage out of the box type of features.
Yeah, the features out of the box that we described. You can go ahead and collect forensic data very granularly from the endpoint. Like you can pick up event logs. You can pick up like let's see here, with the server, for instance. Collected, right? These are basically some of the stuff we collected. This is a file. You can download the file, right? Just 20 megabytes of data here, and this is basically a bunch of data. Okay, so this is basically collects all the Windows event logs. So this is kind of a large file, but this pull all the event logs, so you can actually pull the event logs right away from the machine. And to take a look at it, you can push it. If you don't have it in a sim, you can push it to a sim. You can review it. So it's there for you to have really granular access to all information on the host and in a highly distributed fashion. Yeah, Andre, anything else that you want to make a comment on? I don't know if he's able to, maybe not. All right, so I got it. I got the file here. There's some flow details. Take a look at that. This is a zip file. All right, so here's the collection information. This is a collection summary. Let's see here. Yeah, that's the collection summary. And then you can also look at, we should probably extract this. Go to downloads, I think. There we go, downloads, extract. Extracted that. Anyway, let's see here. Chrome. Where did that download go? Should be in downloads. No, I downloaded it. It's a zip file, right? That's odd. It says it downloaded, right? So we set this here. So this is. This one? Yeah, okay, here it is. Okay, I just did. All right, I found it. All right, let's extract this one. Extract. Yeah, so it's just got basically a bunch of stuff from just the logs. Okay, so yeah, here's the logs of what was run.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and then basically, let's see what else. What else do we have in this zip file? Let's just put that here. Pull that in there. Yeah, here it is. Artifacts, Windows collectors. Yeah, this is you get the upload in CDS. This is basically what was uploaded. Okay, so yeah, these are the different event logs that are available. Source files tells you what exactly was pulled from the machine. So it's quite a bit of stuff. So you can get a pretty good idea of what just trying to see where those files are in this package exactly.
They want salad armadillo.
Any other questions about using this tool?
Larry,
oh, here they are. Okay, all right, I found them. Okay, so these are all the actual event logs we pulled from the machine. As you can see, it's pretty much got everything. So if you quickly need to triage a machine, find out who's on it, what was accessed, you could do it immediately. You can get pretty much anything you want on the machine immediately, so that you have it there for yeah.
So I think we have a couple of questions, Larry. So
go ahead.
Craig,
Right.
okay, Craig.
quick question on the memory extract. Do you know what file format? Does it download any of the file formats that are compatible with volatility?
That's a good question. Let me see. We can take a look. If I don't know that off the top of my head, what
I was flying by there trying to look and see. I was hoping,
but what I could do is I could get you the answer that question for you.
yeah, download it. We can take a look.
Yeah, I can also send you. This is kind of big. I'm not gonna go down.
Yeah,
it's
just
like
file type, it's EWS or RAW or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll just cancel that for now. But anyway, I'll get that information answered for you, Craig.
Cool, thanks.
I think we have one more question somebody had, I think.
Yeah. how does the agent authenticate the server, and how does it send the data from the agent to
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. So the agent actually, when you go back to the slides, if you go back to the slides. Okay, let's just go here. All right, so if we go down to here.
Options in this dialog, including an option for the online new notification. New notification from Windows Update. We've got an update for you. Windows.
So somebody's needs to be muted. Maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of tough when you're in this, shared sessions, right? Yeah. A little background noise. We always have that. Yeah, it's kind of the nature of the beast.
Controls and buttons.
All right, so when you look at, I think I had it here. All right, so yeah, here we go. When you install the server, you do a Velociraptor config generate. This generates the client and the server config files, and the client config.yaml has encryption keys that are generated for that in that particular server, and so that file contains the encryption key. So when the client connects to the server, it uses that to authenticate. That's basically how it works. And also there's a real-time WebSocket that's opened up, and it communicates back and forth. The client initiates the connection, and then the WebSocket is opened between the server and the client, and then there's bidirectional communication between the server and the client. So that's basically how it works. And then so if the client goes offline, then the server will notice it, and then when the client is a heartbeat actually that occurs between. Let me show you, but there's a heartbeat that occurs between the server and the client. As you can see, here's Velociraptor window. So it's connecting to the server, and it's got a heartbeat with the HTTP heartbeat. As you can see, that's what it looks like. And this is all over TLS. So it's secured with the encryption key generated on the server side. Anything else?
Does anybody else have any questions regarding this presentation or what?
It's cool. Thank you very much.
All right.
I was going to just say that in the future, as the CCC Tech Center experiments, Villadex also has a Discord channel for anyone that does need to adopt it and need additional support. And on that, they're working on it community-wise new SOAR integrations. So it seems like it's going to have a good future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we plan on holding a few more workshops on Velociraptor with Sysmon. So and then also if like as you just said, set up like a SOAR sort of what would I call it? So practice between the different colleges so that we can help each other with incident response and triaging. So that's something, if people are interested in that, I think something we're going to start working on. So we'll start creating some videos around using deploying and operating a Velociraptor in certain specific use cases. And then we'll also, take other people who are interested in doing like sort of maybe a tabletop exercise or something like that. So I think there's going to be a lot. We're going to be doing a lot with this because kind of the future of like security operations and monitoring. So that's why we want to introduce it to everyone. So also nice thing about it is open source tool, so everybody can get started on it. You don't have to buy any expensive tooling. It's written by one industry leader who used to be the head of incident response at Google. So it's got some great technology, as you can see. So that's But
Larry, Sorry, one more question.
Sure.
Have you done a cost model? You kind of even guessing what it's going to cost you to run this in AWS?
You know, it's just one server, so you know, I'm running it on a. It all depends on how much data you want to store, but I'm running it on a small. You know, it's you know.
Yep.
So.
I'm going to try to do a POC on this internally and let you
good.
know.
Yeah,
That's
just.
right.
I mean, I like the cloud idea, like for all the benefits. I just,
Yeah.
you know, especially right now, I just got to figure,
Good
okay,
point.
how can I contain my costs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can start off with as much as like one server in AWS, right? And then just deploy a bunch of clients. And in fact, if you when you know how we discussed it, the agentless deploy, you can go ahead and set it up on a share, and then just have clients set up a GPO and just have clients, you know, attached to that and run it, and then see how it scales up. We do some scaling tests we have to do, but it's very lightweight. So it shouldn't be too bad, right? It's all the data is just all the data is only sent. You know, it sends the VQL down to the client, and that's just a text file, and then that executes, and then the data is sent back up. So there's these execution occurs at the endpoint. The server doesn't do much more than collect the data and store it and present it, right? So it's not a lot of like processing that occurs. So I think it's fairly scalable.
Cool. Good.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Larry, very much for your presentation. It was very valuable. Omar,